Hello, this is my review of The Great Explorers, The European Discovery of America by Samuel Eliot Morison, double Pulitzer Prize winner, guy who was born in 1887 and died in 1976. This is a combination of two volumes, I think abridged, which is this is a big book in itself. It's 784 pages. It was 25 hours on audio. And it is tracing the northern voyages with Cabot, Cartier, and Frobisher in one volume, and then the other volume, the second volume, is the southern voyages with Columbus, Magellan, and Drake, with other various fellows into the mix. And the goal of this book is to give sort of a full view of the discoveries of the Americas, not a piecemeal snapshots. This is how guys with relatively little money, this was, I think he notes at one point, less money than cost some of these royals to put on a ball, with small teams to undertake this massive project. Saying like, an astronaut, it was billions of dollars, and it was teams of, hundreds and hundreds, whereas this was pretty small, pretty cheap, but going out into a harsh and unforgiving terrain, and with technology that was, he runs through the technology, but that was an incredibly dangerous, almost suicidal thing, and the passion and the drive of these fellows to get this done. He keeps his focus solely on discovery. He doesn't go into actually going into the Americas. He doesn't. He keeps it on the discoverers. There's not that much on the native peoples. You do get the sense if this book was written now, that it would probably have more of the kind of the native side of the story. But he is careful to say, it's one of these things of the native peoples. They were friendly at first until they realized these bozos were going to stick around, and that, when they would encounter really unfriendly tribes, that's because they'd encountered other Europeans earlier and had been brutalized and knew what they were getting into, and were basically, telling them all to screw off right off the front. We had that. We don't want any more. Unfortunately, that didn't happen to them. You get all these explorers who are like, yes, we're here to save you, by which we're going to enslave you, unknowingly infect you with disease, and probably kill off like 90% of you, if not more. In some of these cases, just completely almost wiped out to extinction on some of the islands that Columbus gets to later. But yeah, we're going to enslave you, but we'll save your souls, which that was the mindset of the time. And I mean, going by the mindset, it's interesting as he goes into these voyages. This was, the Voyagers weren't really interested in the Americans. Americas. And in fact, they probably mostly were like, yeah, we hope that their conception of the Earth was much smaller. They thought, okay, we can just sail around, and that by the time we get to here, we should be in China, or we should be in India, which is how you end up with Indians, because that's Columbus going, hey, Indians, that's that whole thing. But that isn't to say that they were like, I think there's Columbus has dismissively said, oh, he's such a crap navigator, he thought he was in India. It's like these guys had to have complete masters of their craft. Were amazing navigators of Dead Reckoning and stuff like that. They didn't have the technology to figure out, a lot of stuff which we take for granted now. Which, to be honest, the good thing about Morison is he's got a good grasp of just nautical lore, being him being a sailor himself, him being in the Navy. He's got all this technical stuff, and he's like, look, most of the people had no clue up until we actually finally had, advanced technology in the 20th century to be able to actually find their way around. That these guys were able to go out into the complete unknown, was amazing, and we're lucky for it. And that these specific explorers had the drive and the passion to do this, is why this stuff got done. And that they had to be great, or else they would have just been at the bottom of the sea somewhere and completely forgotten. There's the pluses and minuses of the book. I guess there's the pluses and minuses of his knowledge, Morison's knowledge, is that you get an onslaught of nautical stuff right at the beginning of this work, where you get all the ship technology, just going through the ages, and like a lot of like very technical language, which I have trouble with my port and starboard, so I had trouble computing that. I'm sure somebody who's much more into nautical lore and isn't just a complete casual doofus like myself might find this stuff could find this stuff really interesting. I found I just sort of let it wash over me. That's the beauty of doing an audiobook, is you can sort of let some stuff just wash over you. I'm terrible at skim reading when I'm reading a physical book, but audiobook, it's like, well, it just goes by, and if you didn't get it, you didn't get it. And that actually worked well. I think I might have gotten stuck at this part of the book otherwise, which would be a shame because it's right at the beginning. But you also get later chapters like the Mariner's Day, which gives you an idea of the mariner's life in the 1500s, of kind of picking from various sources, because it's one of these things that was just taken for granted so much. It was finding actual people talking about, okay, well, you got, this is the time you got up, all the prayers that were spoken after each shift. So these are all very religious people. I think this the whole thing of, you were at the mercy of the elements and you needed divine intervention to survive. And so there's edicts about, you didn't blaspheme on a ship, because the last thing you wanted was God against you, because the ocean was against you and you could die at any moment. And that was probably just on your regular shipping travels versus sailing off the edge of the world, which is maybe on lower levels people thought that. At this point, we get to the Earth was flat was one of these old wives' tales that was not. Mariners could get up onto the very top mast of thing and look around and see the curvature of the Earth. So, yeah, there's all that. But yeah, so, and he just captures all just the physical conditions, how cramped, how stinking, and how difficult the conditions were just for like regular seamen, much less people going off sailing into the Pacific, not having any clue exactly with Magellan exactly how small or large it was. They thought it was, oh, we'll get over it in a couple of days. It was like weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon weeks later, and like dying of scurvy, that they finally made it to what would be the Philippines. But this book, it's told, like, all the voyages are very thoroughly traced through. He physically went and kind of looked at all the places where these guys went, and it could have been very rote telling, but instead it's just elegantly, beautifully told. And the narrator, Frederick Davidson, who apparently he died like in the early aughts, and he's got about 20 years of audiobooks. And I'm going to go back and listen to more of his stuff, because just amazing how he was able to deal with all the many languages, all the the place names, all the mariner terminology in such a fluid and beautiful way, and really brought the book to life in a way that I probably wouldn't have got even if I'd read it physically, because I don't have the language skills. I don't have all that, and he really brought it to life. So I think from probably my Robert Louis Stevenson days of that kind of thing has kind of given me a little bit of love of kind of the nautical, the shipboard life, even though I'm not someone who would ever survive a day on this at all. But this book is sort of the nonfiction equivalent of Robert Louis Stevenson, just of how beautifully and wonderfully told, how this is just such a well crafted and shaped piece of literature. So it's something that was like, I think it was compiled together and published just 2 years after his death in 1978. But it's something that's worth listening to, worth reading now, as just a wonderful object, regardless of how I'm sure the historiography has changed since then. So yeah, that's my review of the Great Explorers. So more videos later. Bye for now.